Hello, and welcome to this month's AARP New Jersey Fraud Friday Facebook Live. I'm Christine Bercino, an AARP New Jersey volunteer and your moderator today. Hope you're having a good summer. Scammers probably are having a good summer, and they're not slowing down, and they continue to be as creative as ever. Today, we are joined by our guests from the United States Attorney's Office and the FBI to share with you new ways these criminals are trying to scam us. Our guests today are Jamie Hoxie, an Assistant United States Attorney for the District of New Jersey in the Cybercrime Unit. The U.S. Attorney's Office represents the federal law enforcement interests of the people of New Jersey and the country. The office is responsible for the prosecution of federal criminal statutes for all of New Jersey, including internet-related crimes. Jamie has prosecuted a wide range of cases, including matters involving defendants who deceived elderly victims. Sean McCarthy has been a special agent accountant with the FBI's Newark division for 27 years. The FBI is our national security organization with intelligence and law enforcement responsibilities. Sean has investigated dozens of fraudsters engaged in wire, mail, bank, and other related fraud. He also serves as the Elder Crimes Coordinator for the FBI's Newark division. Thank you both for joining us in this important conversation. For our viewers, we want this to be an interactive discussion. So if you have a question, please type it into the comments section and we will do our best to get to it live. Let's get started. Welcome, Jamie. As prices have risen on everything, from gas to groceries, many New Jersey residents are especially concerned right now about their current finances and financial future. How are con artists taking advantage of that?
Thanks for having me, Christine. I'm really happy to be here to talk about this. I have to say as a disclaimer before I say anything that I'm not here speaking on behalf of the Department of Justice, and these views are my own. That being said, we are seeing a wide range of internet scams happening this summer, particularly a group of individuals who are focused on inheritance scams and what we would call advance fee schemes. And so these would be the types of scams in which a victim is told that there is some sort of inheritance. We've seen a lot of gold, a lot of silver, a lot of precious metals that are purportedly stuck in some sort of customs or enforcement space, maybe in the UK, somewhere else. I've heard that there are individuals being detained at JFK with millions and millions of dollars of gold, and they need help paying for the shipments or the customs fees or the taxes. And then obviously, once those fees are extended, there's another excuse as to why money is not coming back, or why, if it's a romance scam with an online lover, why the individual who purportedly has the inheritance is not able to come back into the country. So we're seeing quite a bit of that. We're also seeing, I would say, an uptick in bad actors pretending to be law enforcement. And so we are seeing the schemes and the narratives becoming a bit more sophisticated, with references to the Department of Justice, references to Department of Homeland Security, references to FBI agents even, and with certificates or with LinkedIn profiles or with fake attorneys who appear to have real websites. And so that's kind of what we're seeing right now, surging. And unfortunately, individuals are hoping, perhaps because they're worried about their financial future, they're hoping that this is a good, quick investment opportunity, when in fact it's just plain fraud, the same way it has been in the past. It's just packaged in a new way.
Do they usually call an individual, or email,
so what we are seeing is a use of social media to contact victims. And so we are seeing messages on LinkedIn. We're seeing messages on Facebook Messenger. We're seeing a lot of messaging through various dating sites. And so it may be somebody, and then we're just seeing straight cold calls on email accounts. Perpetrators are doing social engineering and exchanging lists of individuals who may be in a certain demographic. Or if you've been an attempted victim or an actual victim of a fraud scheme in the past, it may be the case that you're on a list somewhere that is being shipped amongst criminals to try to convince you that you should fall into another scheme because they think perhaps you are going to be more susceptible to the scheme.
Right.
We've also seen schemes where an individual who has been, or several individuals who have been unfortunately targeted with an advanced fee scheme or an inheritance scheme or a romance scam are then approached through
Mhm.
email or social media by somebody purporting to be a private investigator, somebody who's
Mhm.
purporting to be law enforcement who can help them, or who will even say, this person was a scammer, I can help you catch them, but I need a fee. It's the same scammer, it's the same group.
Right.
And so that's how we're basically seeing it. Any way that the internet can be used to contact victims. Even,
Mhm.
I've even seen it through push notifications. So the messages that come through
Wow.
your cell phone.
Right. So the best course of action is to either ignore them or talk to your friends, before taking action and doing something in response.
Certainly, certainly, you
Yeah.
should never be giving money to somebody that you are only communicating with online,
Mhm.
that you
Mhm.
haven't met in person. And the perpetrators are very sophisticated. It's very easy to create a fake
Mhm.
LinkedIn account. Very easy to pull up to create a
Right.
website that appears legitimate in the short term.
Mhm.
And there's nothing stopping these individuals from creating different personas, using fake names, having
Right.
identification documents that appear to be real. I've seen passports that look real. I've
Wow.
seen um, many times it's an individual who says that they either are a foreign national or they're a
Mhm.
U.S. citizen who a common theme is an engineer or somebody who works in logistics. I've seen
Mhm.
somebody who works for the Red Cross or an altruistic organization who takes a job that sends them overseas, which would
Mhm.
explain why the victim's money needs to go overseas because
Right.
once it happens, um, as unfortunately any victim who's fallen for one of these schemes knows, once your money goes overseas, it's not impossible. It's very difficult
Yeah.
to get it back, and it makes law enforcement's job more difficult. Although, as several defendants now know, not impossible for
Right.
us to come after you.
Wow. Thanks for that. Jamie, in addition to these schemes that you just talked about, cryptocurrency fraud has been extremely popular. According to the FTC, US consumers reported losing more than $1 billion to fraud involving cryptocurrencies from the start of 2021 through March 2022. This is an alarming number. Can you share with our viewers what is cryptocurrency fraud?
Yes. So unfortunately, we do see a lot of this, and I don't think it's slowing down. So cryptocurrency fraud can take a variety of different approaches. It can be used in a variety of different ways. We have seen schemes involving what victims believe to be they want to get into crypto, right? But they don't know very much about it. And
Right.
so they are Googling or searching the internet and trying to find different investment opportunities involving either more traditional cryptocurrencies like Ethereum or Bitcoin, or maybe
Mhm.
they're hearing about this new type of cryptocurrency, a new coin that is going to be so much better and safer than all of the other
Mhm.
ones. And so they're turning their money over. It's almost always web based. And so it's very difficult for them to know whether it is a legitimate organization or if it's a web
Right.
scam. And then either it's a Ponzi scheme or a pyramid scheme or just straight fraud, just taking their money. We've also seen it where legitimate cryptocurrency exchangers are being used by perpetrators either for money laundering or to just steal money from various individuals. And so if somebody is asking you to open up, for example, a Coinbase account or a Gemini account or one of these cryptocurrency accounts
Right.
with platforms that are trying to do the right thing and are based here in the United States or accessible to US citizens, you know really, if you're giving your credentials to somebody else, you should be asking
Right.
why, right? There's almost never a good reason for that. And I've heard all sorts of things that's been told to victims, right?
Mhm.
Usually the reason is because these cryptocurrency exchanges and platforms are paying attention to what is called the IP addresses of the logins. And what all that
Right.
means is when you log into an online account,
Right.
that website can kind of see the location from where you're logging in from. So they can tell if you're logging in from your home computer or your phone
Mhm.
that you usually log in from. And if perpetrators, many of whom are located overseas, if they were to log in from their actual location, that might trigger fraud. And so they are using victims here in the United States to create these accounts and to kind of
Wow.
this sort of online laundering
Mhm.
system for them. We're
Okay.
also seeing romance scammers or investment scammers say, well, you front these costs for me, these shipping costs, these logistics costs, and then I'm going to pay you back and I'm going to put it in this great crypto investment company. When actually
Mhm.
there's no money coming back to the victims who are
Right.
advancing the money in the first place. But certainly, if you are looking at an investment that you think is a good idea in cryptocurrency, um,
Mhm.
you know, be very wary of any instance where you have to pay some exorbitant amount of money to access your
Mhm.
money. That is
Right.
a huge red flag for these kind of crypto fraud schemes.
Okay. So know the company you're dealing with if you decide to open up an account, and the red flag you described, anyone who's asking to open an account or send some money.
Yes.
Um, those are the two big red flags. Are there others, or those are the two big ones that we should be on the lookout for?
We've also seen instances where individuals have provided access to their computer. They've actually
Mhm.
allowed a perpetrator
Wow.
who's very convincing
Mhm.
to log in, or they'll say, "Oh, well, I've heard from victims. Well, I didn't know how to do it. Right? I didn't know
Oh,
how to open up this account." And so the
wow.
person who I thought I was in this relationship with, or my investment partner,
Mhm.
offered to remote log in and,
Mhm.
show me the ropes. If you're ever doing that, you're providing access to not
Mhm.
only your computer or that particular account to somebody who is a very sophisticated criminal potentially,
Mhm.
but you're providing them with access to all of your other credentials, right? And so once
Right.
they're in your computer, once they're in your system, they could take your social security number, they could take your photographs, they could take your likeness. And
Mhm.
so really be careful about protecting your access to the things
Mhm.
that we would think of traditionally, right? Your date of birth,
Right.
your social, your driver's license, your passport. But even things like your financial accounts can be used uh, and exploited by
Right.
criminals who really need U.S.
Mhm.
bank accounts and crypto accounts to launder the money that they're trying to send overseas.
Wow. Thank you. One last question. Earlier this year, a federal government review of cryptocurrency was ordered by the president. Can you briefly share with us what this review is about for? Should we expect new regulations coming out of that review in the future? Digital currency. I still
So
like my hard dollars.
I do too. So yes, so the piece of Biden's executive order about
Mhm.
cryptocurrency or digital assets that we at the Department of Justice are most familiar with is in February of this year, the Department of Justice created a national cryptocurrency enforcement team. And what
Mhm.
that means is we now have a centralized group of very talented attorneys from across the department who are familiar in cybercrime, who are familiar in money laundering, in asset forfeiture, in cryptocurrency, obviously. And their mandate and their focus is to focus on effective enforcement and effective cases involving digital assets, cryptocurrency,
Mhm.
exchangers, and then beyond that, individuals and entities that are kind of facilitating the misuse, the illegal activity
Right.
involving cryptocurrency and these other digital assets. And so, whenever you have an executive order, and then whenever you have the creation of a team, there's
Mhm.
more resources and more money put into that. And
Okay.
so, I think that the people who are part of that team are incredibly talented, who are hitting the ground running and
Mhm.
coordinating. And I think that I know my experience with law enforcement is that our federal partners are incredibly up to speed on cryptocurrency and how it is evolving, and how to, how to observe assets, how to observe crypto, how to use the technology and the tools to see where cryptocurrency is going, and to see when it's being used in a way to try to hide. And I think that we will just see more and more of that. And we will see more prosecutions that are designed to curb the misuse of cryptocurrency in the future.
Thank you so much, Jamie. That was really valuable information. We're going to move to Sean, our next guest. Before that, I want to remind our viewers, if you have a question for our guests, please type it in the comment section. Our next guest is Sean McCarthy, Special Agent Accountant with the FBI's Newark Division. Thank you, Sean, for joining us today.
Good afternoon, Christine. Thank you for having me.
The FTC reported a record-setting $547 million was lost in romance scams last year. I'm sure that you've seen many cases related to this working at the FBI. Can you give us the inside scoop on how romance scams work? What are the telltale signs to look out for?
Sure. Sadly enough, this happens much too often. I've seen these cases. I've worked some of these cases. If there's anything I can do today to help the audience, I would love to have people leave this discussion learning, or maybe recognizing some red flags that I'm going to throw out there on these romance scams. It is hard for us to get the money back after the money's already been sent. So if we can prevent some of that from happening in the first place, that's really our goal. This all comes down to confidence. The goal of these professional scammers is to build or gain your confidence, and cause you to break down your really what you would recognize as probably something doesn't seem right, or it doesn't pass the smell test. And just to give you an example, just in New Jersey here, in only 7 months of this year, up until July, we have had over 100 victims here in New Jersey over age 60 who've lost $8.5 million in romance-related scams. So what am I talking about? Romance scams, these people do this for a living. Just as I work as an FBI agent and I share information with my counterparts and other law enforcement agencies, these scammers are professionals. They share information, they're crafting their skills. They are on all of the websites, unfortunately, that most people in the audience may find themselves on, especially after having lost a loved one. eHarmony, Silver Singles, Our Time, Match, they're on there, they're trolling. They're looking for someone who's recently lost a loved one. They take photos from other people's true profiles. They create a fake profile. Some of the other things we see is they're usually men, they're usually male, and they usually have an accent. It's not always the case, but a lot of times it is. We notice that they constantly forget their new romantic partner's name. The reason for that is they're dealing with trying to scam so many different people, they start to jumble the names or forget them. They always communicate through text and phone. Very rarely do they ever do any live video feed like we're doing right now. There's always some technical issue that they have, that they can't seem to get their computer to work. Jamie touched on this a little bit. They're always working in some exotic remote location. They're on an oil rig platform somewhere in the middle of the ocean. They're in the frozen tundra territories, or they're somewhere in the Middle East. They're going to start to ask your audience to help them buy small items, a cell phone, a laptop, a tablet, and then it will gradually increase to a point where they will start to ask people for money. And they're going to want that money wired to them. They're going to want it placed in a bank account for them. Sometimes they'll even come up with a story that their employer
Okay, we may have lost Sean. Just wait a few minutes. Okay.
Christine, I'm happy to jump in.
Okay.
So,
All right.
in addition to what we see where they may say their employer needs money or their employer needs a
Right.
loan. We've seen instances, a construction site where there's an accident that occurs is a common narrative in romance scams, where the individual, the perpetrator, either needs to pay for hospital bills, either for himself or the person who purportedly was injured, or sometimes it goes a step further. They need money for legal bills because now there's
Right.
a lawsuit, or they're being charged with murder. And so these sorts of stories are designed, and they will be accompanied with photos. There will be horrific photos that are circulated amongst these perpetrators, that will look real. But the whole purpose of these stories is to tug on the heartstrings, right? To have such an
Right.
emotional story that would seem like, how could you not give money over, right? And there's usually always a promise to pay back. And in fact, sometimes there will even be fake bank accounts set up, or the perpetrators will use other victims' credit cards, and they will pay a different victim, pay off a different victim's um, loans or whatever they
Right.
need, to make it appear that they have the money to kind of pay back these loans if
Right.
the victim goes forward. But of course, once the victim pays, the credit cards are charged back, and they're out even more money than they originally thought.
Wow.
Um, so
So
it's
it's like
very
what,
sad to see.
yeah, it's like what Sean started saying in the beginning, is that the scammer builds your confidence and trust, and then at a certain point, they start saying, creating panic situations. I need this money, whatever. You have to pay right away. I have to pay
Yes.
this, and then your empathy and your sympathy starts coming in.
Yes, and they will use particular things that are important to you. So I have
Right.
seen several scammers, go on Christian Mingle or websites
Mhm.
that are, particular to a particular faith, and
Mhm.
they will start throwing the religious piece hard at the
Right.
victim, trying to
Wow.
convince them that they're legitimate, and that what they're doing is aligned with their like religious faith.
Right.
And so that I've seen nothing off base with these guys.
Wow. Um, I think Sean is trying to come back, but should be soon. Um, Moving on, he was also going to touch on impersonation scams a little bit. Oh, there is Sean. Jamie,
Murphy is alive and well.
that's
just as
okay.
just as the worst possible time to lose internet connection, folks. That's what happened.
That's all right. Jamie did a nice job covering romance scams for us.
Thank
So
you, Jamie.
if we can move on to impersonation scams, we know that con artists are not only pretending to be romance partners, but they often impersonate government agencies as well, like the IRS and so on and so forth. So impersonation scams, I know in surveys we've taken with New Jersey residents, are consistently high concern. So how can we tell if it's a real agency or a scammer, Sean?
Okay, sure. There's certain agencies I think that the audience would be more familiar with. The Social Security Administration, because so many of the audience receive benefits. The Social Security Administration does make arrests, occasionally not to the volume that the FBI does. However, those are for cases usually where people are defrauding the Social Security Administration. Most of these impersonation scams involve the fake government agent or detective or investigator. They use some terms that we don't even have. And they'll claim that there was an error intentionally made on the victim's fault. So they're blaming them. They owe a large balance and that they're on their way to their house to be arrested. And they offer them the unique opportunity to pay the fine or whatever is owed immediately. What they're trying to do is instill panic and fear. They don't want you to call anyone. They don't want you to call the local police. I can tell you that the IRS is used in a lot of these scams. The IRS initially contacts everyone via the United States mail. You will not first receive a phone call from the Internal Revenue Service. You may get that later down the road, but any contact from the Internal Revenue Service is always going to be primarily first through the U.S. mail. The FBI, obviously, we arrest a lot of people. When we go out to do an arrest, We have clearly marked hats on our jackets. We wear our raid vests. We will oftentimes have the local or county police or sheriff's department with us, depending on where in the country we are. We want whoever looks out the window to recognize right away that this is a legitimate arrest that's taking place. And people can always call 911 in the middle of an arrest if they really are concerned that the people outside are not actual law enforcement agents. And this basically, we expect when I talk to people on the phone, it's very common, Christine, for people to ask me to verify my identity. I expect that.
Right.
And there are ways you can do that. Your audience can do that. They can call the local FBI office. It's still in the phone book. It's still, people are using phone books. 411 still works. You can call 411 directory assistance and they will give you the number for the FBI independently. You could also call the local police department and ask to confirm the number of the agency. And I think that's important because we don't want anyone to be further victimized by these people who will claim that they are from our agency. It really upsets us and we take it to heart when this kind of thing happens.
Wow. Thank you for letting us know about being, calling as if the local police or the FBI office to verify. Because sometimes, you have this vision, you just flash the badge, but it's good to know that you can call and verify too. Okay. Thanks, Sean, for that. I'm going to bring back Jamie as we wrap our time together. If someone, as with your closing thoughts, and also if someone does experience scam, what should they do, and how can the U.S. Attorney's Office and FBI help? And any additional closing thoughts that you may have. Start with Jamie.
I would just say, don't be embarrassed. It happens to a lot of people. These guys are, this is their whole job, is to convince you that what they're talking about is legitimate and accurate. Keep whatever communications or data you have from these people in the event that we pursue a prosecution and we find somebody who's criminally responsible. We will need that evidence. And so keeping the material is very helpful for us. And it may take a while for us to figure out who the person is behind the keyboard. But keeping those materials is incredibly helpful in the course of our investigation. And report it to the FBI. Because if you don't report it, it's going to be very difficult for us to know that you were a victim. And we've seen it all. So that there's no shame that you've been a victim of a scam with these guys.
Sean?
Yes, Jamie, thank you for that, because we realize nobody likes to admit that they've been taken. And this is happening to your neighbors, your friends, your relatives. Fortunately, the Department of Justice did create an elder fraud tip line. And that number, I believe, will be available on AARP's site. But there is a dedicated fraud tip line just for elder-related frauds. There is also the FBI's general tip line. Now, that obviously we receive calls on all kinds of different matters that we investigate, but that is also available as well. And I think that number will be on your screen shortly. The third avenue is also what is known as our Internet Complaint Center. And it goes by the website IC and the number 3.gov. And that's a central repository for all crimes that get reported to us. And there is a special section where we flag and look for people who are been victimized in this case due to their age. And one thing I want to bring up is the financial fraud kill chain. If money is wired and if it goes internationally, there is within 72 hours, we have a very good chance based on partnerships with the financial institutions of pulling or clawing that money back. It's imperative that people report that quickly. I can't say it enough. I felt heartbroken when I get calls from people a week later telling me about the loss of money, only to tell them that we really can't pull it back. Domestically, we're able to do it frequently, but it's really important that you call as fast as you can. And don't assume that when you call the local police that they're going to call the local FBI office and tell us what happened to you. That usually doesn't happen. You have to report it yourself.
Thank you. Thank you both. These are This past half hour was so informative, and thank you for the good points and takeaways for our viewers. It's nice to see the synergy and coordination between the U.S. Attorney's Office and the FBI on all these fraud matters. Okay, for our viewers, if you're concerned you've been scammed, you can reach a trained volunteer at the AARP Fraud Watch Network helpline at 877-908-3360. Again, that's 877-908-3360. If you'd like more information and resources on fraud and scams from AARP New Jersey, please visit aarp.org/NJFightsFraud. Again, that's aarp.org/NJFightsFraud. If you're interested in learning more about free fun events, special offers, and the latest news from AARP, text the word YES to email to 50757 to receive a one-time text message from AARP with a link to sign up for emails and learn about what AARP has to offer. Message and data rates may apply. We hope you learned something new today about how you can stay safe from fraud and scams, and hope you tune in to our Facebook Live next month. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Christine.
Thank you.